Okay, I'm going to start out by fixing this Pickwick point. I was looking at, I was reviewing the previous video and I noticed that I had done the barbs wrong on the Pickwick on this one here, so I'm going to fix that. And I thought about it last night. I was going to delete the whole video and then redo it, but I said, nah, I think you guys are able to follow the progression through the various videos, although I'll probably get questions or comments about the Pickwick not being right. This is actually much easier to create than I thought. The intersection between the stem and the blade, it's smooth. It's a smooth transition. There's no sharp transition there. And the barbs often turn downward, not upward. I don't know where I got that from. I think I might have mixed it up with the Harden. Seriously, I don't know where I came up with that. Anyway, and a lot of times these are asymmetrical. There's another point that's similar to the Pickwick where it's found together in the same area. I want to say Hardaway, but I can't remember. Anyway, the transition is rounded and much easier to produce. I think the stem is a little long too. So I'll just take some off. It makes it beefier anyway. It looks like a lot of these Pickwicks were nice and thick and able to handle a lot of abuse. I don't think there was any thinning flakes up from the base on these. Just your run-in-the-mill flaking on the sides. Actually a fairly easy point to make. Once you get the blade flat, that's pretty much, you've got 90% of the point done once you get this flattened cross section or elliptical. Some of these are pretty thick. Okay. A lot of bold flaking, which means it would just minimal flaking. Okay, so there you go. Now, let me just do this really quick. The Eastgate, this is too flat across the bottom, so what I'm going to do is make these barbs look more correct. And I wanted to do this on video and not sneakily do it without anyone seeing or whatever. I did not see any Eastgates with a flat bottom. They all have barbs that are cut upward and not flat. Now I'm going to be careful with the transition between regular chert and obsidian. I could just blow off one of these barbs by pushing too hard on the edges. I just need extremely light pressure on the obsidian in comparison to the chert. Now some of these Eastgates are split stem, so I think the next Eastgate that I do is going to be split stem. You know, a notch in the middle of the stem, of the base of the stem. Okay. So I think that's more realistic there. with the barbs cut upward. Perhaps more of a serrated look. Okay, so those are two quick fixes. The Pickwick and the Eastgate. Now I'm going to do a complete overhaul of a broken blade I broke a long time ago. It was a large blade. I split it somehow. So I think what I'll do is this will be the bottom and this will be the point, the top. Okay. Now this is West Texas chert, but it resembles Burlington in many ways. It's a heat-treated West Texas chert. But this type of chert seems to be pretty common, this chalky type of chert. And I realize that's kind of confusing because chert does not form within chalk, it forms within limestone. But it feels chalky. Okay, so best way to do this would probably be with indirect percussion. I could take a billet and thin this out, but this is actually quite brittle. So I think this is might be like in between Keokuk and Burlington. Heat-treated Keokuk and heat-treated Burlington. It's like an in-between, between those two. So it is brittle, but not as brittle as Keokuk. So Pickwick's had bold, flaking, a relatively thick cross-section, and not symmetrical, with a contracting stem or straight stem. And I saw one example with beveling, and the beveling was on, you could see it on this side, which means you can see the flakes on this side, on the right. I'll try to do this quick because I gotta be somewhere. I'm trying to sneak this in between errands. So with the characteristics of this point, I can probably do the entire thing with indirect percussion or punch work with no pressure at all for the first stage, for stage one without any use. And then as it's being used, pressure is the retouch method. You know, retouch with pressure flaking, which causes beveling or patterned flaking, but I don't think Pickwick's had any kind of patterned flaking. I just mentioned that because sometimes when resharpening, you do have a nice pattern flaking, or a nice flaking pattern when it's resharpened on the blade. So instead of just having a bevel, sometimes I run longer flakes, which can give you a nice pattern. So my objective is just to flatten out the blade I don't think they tapered exactly from tip to base. I'm sure they tapered, but it wasn't it wasn't one of those very graceful thin tapers. It was probably kind of thin here and then thick and then slowly tapered and then really thin at the very tip, I guess. I don't know. I only saw one side view, and I forgot to check my Noel Justice books on this one. Noel Justice sometimes will describe the cross sections or have pictures of the cross sections, sketches in the book. All right, so I got to pay attention because this stuff is kind of steppy. Yeah, if I don't pay attention, I can create step fractures really easy on this stuff. And how do you avoid step fractures? For those of you who are just tuning in, don't bite off more than you can chew, which means don't try to overdo it. But also don't underdo it. You have to ride that line in between. And sometimes you're right on the verge of breaking everything. So when you're trying to ride that line, it seems like it's going to break if I am too aggressive, and it's going to step if I'm not aggressive enough. So what do I do? And basically, the short answer to that is look for a good material. If you don't have good material, you're just going to have to get used to the material you're working with. It's going to take a lot of breakages, a lot of frustration, a lot of throwing your failures out the window or crushing them into powder like I used to do. When I had a big failure, when I first started, I would just smash the entire thing into powder and get rid of it so that the bad luck from the breakage didn't contaminate the next project. That's the mentality anyway. And even though that's superstitious, it's so satisfying. Just to smash the broken one to powder or little bitty pieces. And then move on to the next one. Or you can refurbish like I'm doing now. Eventually it's no big deal. All right, beautiful. Now, if every flake could do that, if I could do that with every flake, I'd be so happy. But can't have everything. I'm leaving myself plenty of width just in case I make a mistake. I could take it down and make it more narrow right away and then just thin it down with really bold flaking, but I'm leaving myself width just in case I get one of these things in the middle here, and I need width to develop platforms in various areas so I can attack it. Pollen is terrible today. Okay. Nice. I think I actually did overshoot that one. Yep. Little thin flake and pop right off the edge. And I'm always criticizing overshots, and I'm making fun. If I make fun in the comments, like if I answer someone, and I just answered someone and told them that we cannot question the technology, the advanced technology of the overshots, so we must tolerate it. We must tolerate when it overshoots, it's not a bad thing. I'm joking, right? So don't take it seriously when I say stuff like we must bow to the power of the overshot or something like that. Okay? I'm just making fun of the way that certain people think overshots are really, really great. Okay. Yeah, nice clean flake without a step, and then I mess it up with the one right beside it with a step fracture. But since this is a Pickwick and it's very tolerant, I'm not going to worry about it. I see all kinds of defects on Pickwicks when I was looking at the photographs. Okay, I do need to be careful because if I don't attack that lump correctly, it's going to stay there forever. Okay. I need to start thinking about getting the right profile. And most of them that I've seen have been long and narrow, right? But I don't know the first stage. Is the first stage oval or is the first stage long and narrow? I am going to do like slight beveling later with the final finishing, but taking down the margins right now gives me some good platforms to thin this out and get rid of the lumps. I'm not going to thin it down too much. I just want to get rid of these lumps, get rid of that lump and this one. And they're both looking at step fractures, staring down the barrel of that step fracture. I'm attacking it in a way that's risky. Yeah, it didn't work so well. I might be able to get it from the back side. Attack it from the rear and then eliminate that. Let's see. When the flaker becomes irregular, the flakes become irregular. So I got to make sure that that tip is well rounded. That's the way I prefer. Or, you know, if you prefer a flattened, then make sure it's always dressed and not irregular. Nice. Okay, so now I just got to thin down a little bit on the rest of it. Being careful that I don't snap it there now because it's weak. Which means minimal striking force to get the job done. And that's like one of the hardest things to do in flint knapping. Minimal striking force to get the job done is extremely difficult. It takes a lot of time to get to that stage of flint knapping where you can recognize what the minimal force is, and the subconscious takes over. So, you know, I can talk and do that at the same time. So that means that my subconscious is doing most of the work. All right, so I've got a good cross section. That's pretty much all I need for this. Right, I got 90% of it done. All it is this pressure finish, or I can even finish with some percussion work. There I go with the steppy tip again. I have to work out some kind of methodical procedure on the tips, because I always end up with a step fracture there. And I always have to damage control the situation. It gets kind of frustrating. Checking with every strike so I can check to make sure I'm using the right amount of force. And the right amount of platform and angle and all that, so I don't get steps. I don't want any step fractures at this stage. It's not always possible to eliminate them, but that just makes it look more real. That's my story. I gotta get rid of that, or it's gonna bug me. I could probably get rid of it with I can probably get rid of it with pressure, so I'll leave it. It's so much quicker to shape the sides with percussion than stick with percussion for now to do the basic shaping. Pickwick's had short stems, right? For the most part, relatively short stems. Nothing fancy about the flaking. Just kind of matter of fact and expediently done. I gotta be careful because this stuff is more brittle than the Buffalo River. I don't know if these Stems are ground. I don't think they're ground on the Pickwick. I think they're just sharp. Just left sharp. This is actually a pretty thin stem. Right. But it gets thick pretty fast, so it's a little bit thicker up here than it is on the Lost Lakes and stuff, on the ones I made anyway. All right, so I could thin it down there some more, but I'm not going to. It's already 25 minutes. I'll just finish up with pressure. With just minimal flake removals, in theory. Right? Just dress up that edge a little bit, and then most of the pressure flaking is going to be the other way because it's more noticeable on the right side than it is on the other. At least in the photographs that I saw. And if this runs a little over 30 minutes, I'll just tag on the extra to the end and make it just one video. This will be part 2 of the refurbish. Even though I did a full Pickwick. Yeah, I didn't take care of that step there. Like I said I was going to with the pressure. So yeah, it'll probably run over 30 minutes because I need to get rid of that area. Take extra time to get rid of that. Okay, so one more pass on each side should be enough. There's actually 2 lumps, so that's kind of good. They're right there next to each other. I can take a flake to get rid of one and then use the flake scar to try to get the other one. Well, I can't. I gotta take a little more off. That is stubborn. Because I'm working with barely enough edge because I don't want to lose width right there. Okay. All right, so I'll continue on, then I'll just add the rest of this onto the end of the video. I'll continue in the next segment. Okay, so I got the cross section pretty well done. Now all I need to do is I'm going to do some edge work so it shows on this side, the flaking, and then flaking showing on that side, and it'll be done. The retouch flaking. Which in theory should make the edge nice and sharp for the final pass. Because right now it's ground down pretty dull. And I'm just pushing on the surface. Most of the time, sometimes I can find an edge and press off a long flake if I need to on a thick spot. But for the most part, it's pressing on the surface or the rounded area that I just ground down. And if the edge looks too wavy, I'll just take a few more flakes off. Alright, so that's sharp all the way down. You can see some of the flaking there. So I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. It's almost the same consistency as that Buffalo River. Just a little more brittle, and this is not consistent. It's more chalky up here than it is down here. Very similar also to the Buffalo River. It does that too. It's drier in some areas than others. The Buffalo River, some areas are nice and smooth and glossy. In other areas, it's kind of dull and feels rough. And I'll just fix those areas that look crooked. And it's pretty much done. Except now I got a weird thing going on there. Oh yeah, that's because I hit that step fracture. I don't know, were the Pickwicks worried about the tips? I heard on some of these, not even the edges are symmetrical. You know, like one side of the tip could have a concavity. It could be concave on one side and then convex on the other. Or that might be with a different point, I don't know. I'm going to try to even it up at least a little bit. Okay, so I hope that's okay. Yeah, I know I shouldn't mess with it. I tend to want to make them perfectly symmetrical. Okay, so I shouldn't mess with it. All right, so there we go. You can see on the pictures that I saw, there's a lot of retouch flaking on one side and the other looks pretty bold and non-touched, right? Same on the other. Although on this one, there is some retouch flaking that is very noticeable on that side. But for the most part, it's bold flaking on the interior. The stem is rather short. These the notches, the foot of the notches are very easy to construct, nice and rounded. Sometimes the barbs turn downward, and sometimes they're straight, as far as I remember. I'm trying to get this point type correct. And I don't even know if they're pointy. I saw a lot of them that were pointy, but I don't think it has to be. Okay, so there you go. The second part of this refurbish. Let me just get a thumbnail shot. And I'll be done. Let's see. It's the same color as the glove. I want to get a shot that highlights the flaking. Might not be able to do it. Okay. That's it.